Okay, so my name is Henning. I am the founder of Atlatec, and Atlatec creates 3D maps for autonomous driving. And also, Atlatec has been acquired by Robert Bosch only a few months ago, so that means we are now part of the Robert Bosch group. And within the next few minutes, I will talk about what is a 3D map, why would you care in the first place, and what does it have to do with Bosch, right? So in principle, we build an exact copy of the environment in a digital form, like you can see in these images. And this representation of the environment guides an autonomous vehicle. And why is that helpful and why is that useful? Well, the reason behind it is if you operate an autonomous vehicle and the autonomous vehicle is supposed to cross an intersection, then there's tons of information which is really difficult to extract from onboard sensors. So one thing you would like to know is where is actually the driving lane that crosses this intersection, where is the boundary of this driving lane, where are some stop lines, where are some holding lines, where are some traffic lights, where are some other infrastructure that is relevant to the path that you want to take over this intersection. That is basically the geometry of that intersection, which is very useful to have a priori and prior to approaching this intersection. But on top of that, there's also information about how do these different assets of our 3D map of the environment relate to one another. So I mentioned, for example, traffic lights and lanes. But these two are connected, right? Because you have certain traffic lights which are associated with certain driving lanes over the intersection. And all this information and much more can be packed into these very accurate 3D maps. And these very accurate 3D maps then can guide an autonomous vehicle. So in the slide deck, it's basically just a collection of some examples we built in the past, over the past few years. And unlike, this is a nice example actually, because in this example, you can see what the yield rules are in an intersection. And this intersection, it's not trivial, but it's also not top of line complex, right? I mean, if you go to downtown San Francisco, if you go to downtown Tokyo, or even more complex cities, then this is a joke, right? But even this one is already fairly complex, and all these yield rules, when you want to cross that intersection, can be packed into these 3D maps that we built. Unlike some other companies, we didn't double down on artificial intelligence alone. We did this, but not alone. But in addition to artificial intelligence, we also acknowledged very early on that we do need human labor in building these maps, and we do need human labor to get to some degree of automotive quality, and AI alone will not do it. And I'm still deeply convinced that this is the way to go. So that means that in the past, we didn't only build AI models, but we also built tons of software around it to have a crowd of co-workers in best cost countries to help with quality control. And we thought that this is a prerequisite to really scale this up. And that's basically the tooling we have today. Maybe just a couple more examples from the maps we have built. This is also a nice example. When you look at this, you see the top view of the pavement, and you see the top view of that very merger here, right? And if you do compare this to LiDAR, a typical LiDAR scan, which is oftentimes used to build these maps, you will notice that in this very example, you have very fine-grained resolution, right? With this image, you can see and pick up all the fine-grained details of what you actually encounter in this area here. And the reason behind it, why we have that high resolution, is basically that we derive almost everything, not quite everything, but almost everything from our primary sensors, which are cameras. So we are computer vision guys. That's how it all started, right? Tons and tons of more examples from different places here, different locations. With 50 seconds left on the clock, I finally want to talk about what that has to do with Bosch. We met Bosch during one of these events like this one here today, and there was almost an immediate fit in terms of vision, in terms of culture, in terms of doing things, and then it very naturally led to the first wave of proof of concepts where my team and the Bosch team worked together on doing these things. And then a second wave of POCs, and then eventually we came to the conclusion that, hey, you know what? If we really join forces deeply and really go full steam in the right direction, we can actually bring this technology to a level where it can power level 4 autonomous vehicles and do this really at scale. And with Bosch, I feel like we have found an excellent industrialization partner, and for my team and myself, it's really a pleasure to work with our wonderful colleagues at Bosch now. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.